So I'm really pleased to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Kerry Howell from the University of Plymouth, who'll be presenting a talk on using AI to improve monitoring of the UK seafloor biodiversity. After, we have Johnny Savage from JNCC, whose talk is on UK Marine Image Broker, a federated database to unify UK imagery. So without further delay, I'll hand over to today's speakers.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Johnny Savage. I'm a Marine Evidence Manager at JNCC. And today I'm going to be talking about the Image Broker project, which was undertaken as part of Defra's Marine Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment Programme. So this project was part of the MNCA Offshore Monitoring Workstream. This was work package 4.6. And this project was a discovery piece of work to conduct initial research and development to explore how an image broker system could operate and find which areas would need further work to improve the underlying components. We also looked at the end users for this type of system to make sure that we could tailor the service to meet their requirements. This project was led by JNCC and the MBA, and we were supported by a steering group with representatives from various other public bodies, including CFAS, Natural England, and NOC. So today I'm first going to be talking about the context and a bit of background to image catalogs and why an image broker system is needed, and then some of the context on how we're going to get the system to work. Then I'll talk through some data standards that we are required to make sure it operates efficiently. And then hopefully a live demonstration of our current demonstrator service, which is a small sample of images on the JNCC and the DASH resource spaces, and then finish up with some next steps for this work going on after the MNCA project has completed. So a bit of context on the image broker. So currently, various public bodies in the UK collect marine benthic imagery as part of their monitoring of protected sites and features in the inshore and the offshore. These data are then often stored internally, with each organisation archiving the captured imagery and only publishing the results of the analysis in the form of reports or inputting data into larger databases, such as Marine Recorder. But the images themselves are more difficult to share due to the large size of the datasets, and this problem is only going to get worse as camera systems improve and imagery is captured in greater resolution and the file size is getting bigger. And also survey designs are changing and larger volumes of data are being collected, which includes the still imagery and video components. Additionally, due to the technical challenges of sharing imagery, it's difficult for the public to currently view the images that are captured on survey. And this is a shame, as some of the marine features that we have around the UK really are quite stunning to look at if they're just very hard to see. And a lot of effort goes into capturing this data in the first place, so it'd be nice if we could share the data captured much more widely. Following on from the issues of collecting large volumes of data, when we do get the data back on land, it is then very time-consuming and quite expensive to analyze this magnitude of data. Recent work with AI and machine learning models can now be used to reduce the amount of effort that is required to run these analyses. So models can be used to run object classification. So this is where a model can detect a thing in an image. So in the example, the image I've got at the bottom of the screen there, it'd be able to detect that that skate is a thing, but not exactly what it is. And this means that when an analyst comes to review the image, they can instead just look at a small subsection of thumbnails to attach an ID to, rather than having to search through the entire image to first pick out objects that need identification. Or more complex models can give an ID to vary in taxonomic resolution, depending on the accuracy of the model. However, for both of these things to work, we need a large and diverse training data set. As you can imagine, a picture of an animal will vary quite a lot depending exactly where it's captured. So this can be the underlying substrate that the animal is on. Captured at different depths may affect the light used, and then some species are just harder to identify than others. So some cup corals could stand out quite brightly against the substrate that they're on, whereas some species more try and blend into the sand or rock, so they can be much harder to pick out. A potential solution to a lot of these issues is to unite these various separated repositories of data and have all these data easily accessible. So this would increase the availability of data for the public and for other organizations to use. It also allows all this annotated data to be used for training models, to reduce the effort to analyze future data, and it would allow for data sets to undergo secondary analysis. So sometimes when data is collected, we're only interested in looking at one particular thing. So it could be looking at sponges or corals, depending on the protected feature. But there's no reason why this image, if it wasn't widely accessible, couldn't be analyzed again for something completely different. So a benefit of having all of our marine imagery more accessible online is that then there's a lot of data out there which can undergo secondary analysis. So this potential solution of uniting our various separated databases is what we aim to explore in this project, and to make sure it could still work in the UK context with our various public bodies collecting data. So the image broker, our current design that we've built our demonstrator on, is a federated database. So the model on the left there is the more traditional centralized database. So in that scenario, all the organizations who collect data would all submit it to a central facility, and all the data would be stored physically together in a single place, which a user could then query and extract data from. The model on the right is a federated design, which is what we've based our current system on. And in this scenario, every data collector has their own separate database, which they would own and maintain. And then the image broker service is then able to kind of look into each of these databases, query the data within, and then deliver the results in a standardized way to the end user. So this design allows the data providers much more control over their own data because it will be on their own database. So when it comes to what they want to upload, if they want to remove any data, updating data in the future, and attaching specific licensing constraints to any particular data set is all much more easily done in a federated design. However, a big thing that needs consideration with a federated design is that all the data within the various separate databases all need to follow the same common standards so that the image broker service can understand the data in there, and that when that data is then delivered to the end user, it's all in a standardized way and ready to be used for future analysis, if it's AI work or any other data processing. So as part of the MNCA project, we reviewed current existing data standards. So there are three main components of this work. So it's the images themselves, how they are stored and delivered when kind of stored on the internet, how the metadata for the image and the image data set is formatted, which fields need to be included, any mandatory fields which are vital in terms of data processing, and how annotations are formatted. So annotations in this context relate to what is in an image, so the name of a species, and then exactly where within the image it's located, so usually in the form of coordinates. So as part of this work, we reviewed existing standards, we held a workshop with our partners in the project, and we came up with a series of recommendations for each of these three aspects. So we used the IIIF format for imagery. So this is the International Image Interoperability Framework, and it's a widely used standardized way images are delivered, viewed, and interacted with over the internet. It was first started and currently used widely by libraries and research institutions around the globe, and it allows for an image to be hosted in one single place online, and then it can be used multiple times across multiple platforms, and it's a very standardized and widely used way. A little bit more detail on how it works. The core of the IIIF is two APIs. I'm going to focus on the image API as that's the one that we are using for this project. And the image API, it allows the image server where the image is saved to deliver that image to the user. There can be some minor processing along the way, so such as changing the size, zooming into a specific region, or rotating the image. And the benefit of this is that it's a widely used standard. You can simply call up wherever that image is stored and then view it on any other system. A sort of example of this, so the original image on the far left would be an image that is saved somewhere on a website. And then using that IIIF API, you can do some minor processing, such as selecting a region, changing the size, the rotation, changing the color and the format. So each of those 5 aspects there come into the IIIF compliance. There's various levels of compliance based on how much processing you're allowed to do. For the context of the image broker system, we are recommending level 0, so the minimum requirement for IIIF, which basically only allows the full image without any additional processing to be delivered. Our reason behind this is that the processing is done by the host. So if you are hosting a large data set of marine imagery from your survey, and suddenly someone wants 1,000 images and they want them all clipped to a certain region, changed format, that can put a lot of burden on the host. So we were going for level 0, which just delivers the image itself. For the metadata and for the annotations, we're using the IFDO format, so this is the image fair digital object, and it follows the FAIR principles of data, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And the IFDO format produces a human and machine readable metadata file over the entire data set. So this is as a JSON file, which is easily input into models. And the IFDO standard has 3 sections. So the core section is the main metadata of the data set. The capture section has additional fields on how it was created, so looking at the camera system used. And the content is what's in the image, so that's where our annotation information comes in. So the core metadata are all things which are already widely used, so giving the image data set a unique name and unique identifier number. And then we have per image items, such as the time and date it was taken, the position, and any more specific information on how the image was captured, so if it was on a particular survey or project. And here also we have licensing and copyright information, which is vital for any data which is published publicly. The content section of the IFDO is where we have our annotation, so we have a list of all the labels used within the entire image data set, the creators of the annotations, and then the image annotations themselves at a per image level, which has the shape, so mainly a point or a polygon, the coordinates of where that shape is within the image, and then affixing a label to it to say, at this point, there is a starfish, for example. So the MNCA project has now finished, and as part of this, we have produced a recommendations report, which reviewed various imagery metadata and annotation formats, and then came to our recommendations, which I've just been through quickly. And we are aiming to publicly publish that recommendation report shortly. We've also have successfully created a image broker demonstrator service, which connects a small sample of images on the JNCC and Dash resource space. And as part of this, the annotations are stored in the IFDO format to ensure that that was a viable way to store the annotation information. So in this little diagram, on the left is the JNCC resource space available online, and on the right is the Dash resource space with our images for this project visible. And our image broker service basically has the database of annotations which you can search through, and then it will find the associated image and then deliver that to you, which I will attempt to demonstrate live. So this is our working image demonstrator. I say it's currently got the Dash and the JNCC resource spaces connected. And then for the purpose of this project, we've just created a list of all the annotations within it. So for example, this one is our cup coral, and we can search within it, and it will find all the images in our sample data set, which have cup corals, and then you are able to kind of view a full-size image at the various resource space. So we have successfully demonstrated that this system can work. And in the next steps for this project, say that MNCA work has finished, with our report to be published soon, but the image broker work will continue under Software Tool 3 of PayDiver. So this is a NERC-funded project led by NOC. We'll have continued input from expert groups, including the Big Picture group. And this will really be further work on the image broker tool, expanding on what we've learned through the MNTA demonstrator. So we'll look to expand our libraries of data, increase the data size and complexity, keep reviewing the IFDO and IIIF formats to ensure they still suit the purpose, and also look to flesh out other aspects of the tool, such as how data is exported and imported, and create recommendations for how data can be saved online to participate in the image broker. And I'll just round off really quickly with some thank yous. So the MBA, CFAS, Natural England, and NOC for their input on this project, and Fear Mice, who was our developer who created the image broker service. So yeah, that's the end of my talk. I think any questions can go on the Slido, or there'll be a Q&A session at the end of the second talk. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm reporting on a piece of work also as part of the same Defra-led project, which was about developing a pilot study to see what current off-the-shelf AI is capable of in terms of supporting us to process our imagery. So the work I'm presenting is as always, a bunch of people involved. I just want to acknowledge Julia and David and Aaron. Right, one sec. Where am I going? Okay, so the main objectives of this project, this was a really short project. It was a 9-month project. So I just want to caveat this by this was a pilot. There was not enough time to do a lot of things. So it was just a quick look-see. But the main objectives were to develop a clean and standardized AI training data set for UK epibenthic marine macrofauna, develop an object detection AI tool with some level of classification if possible, and contribute to the development of standards then for the use of AI in monitoring, thinking ahead to where we want to get to. So we decided to use the Beagle annotation tool as a place to manage and store our AI training data set. Hopefully most people are familiar with Beagle. It's basically a design tool for annotation work with imagery. And we decided to use the Smart ID library or classification system as a method for standardizing our data sets to a single classification scheme. And we started the project basically by putting out a data call for annotated imagery to try and pull a data set together from across the UK. So we had data contributed by CFAS, by JNCC, by Marine Science Scotland, and also by Plymouth University and Plymouth Marine Lab. And that is the extent of the data we drew, which was a great spread. Task number 1 then was to try to merge the annotated imagery together into a single training data set. And I have to say this was the bulk of the work involved. So we put out the data call, we got a lot of information back, a lot of Beagle volumes basically of annotated data, 445 Beagle volumes to be precise, over 2 million annotations, and all attached to 17 different label trees. That isn't incredibly helpful. So we had to standardize that data to a single label tree, and also remove any annotations that were not helpful. So a lot of those annotations might have been biotope type, they might have been sediment type. We weren't interested in any of that. So after going through merging and cleaning out the annotations we didn't need, we ended up with 145 Beagle volumes, 1 label tree, and 800,000 annotations. So we lost quite a lot in that first pass cleaning process. And this was the data set we took on for playing with AI. Before we can do anything with AI, though, you need to have a think about some of the problems in this data set, of which there were many. I'm sure you can imagine. First thing to consider is the different shapes used in annotation. By far and away, most of the annotations available were point annotations. You can see in this chart here. Many other different shapes used, but a huge amount of the data was point annotations, which is problematic when it comes to training AI. So you can see here, yeah, a couple of different boxes and polygon annotations going on. We also had different gear types, so very different fields of view, different perspectives on the seabed. So we had data from AUV, drop cam, and ROV. Most of it came from drop camera systems, unsurprisingly. And again, that causes issues in so much as it's a hugely unbalanced data set with respect to what it's being, any AI is being trained on. And the imagery varied again in things like lighting, aspect, angle on the seabed. So here's a couple of examples from the deep sea, from an ROV, and from a towed camera system from shallow water. So lots of difference in lighting as well, and water clarity. And then differences in location and also substrate type. So you can see here the, broadly speaking, different regions from which the data came. If you look, for example, at stony corals as a class, it's most of the way down that list. Most of the stony coral annotations came from Poby Bank and Hague Frath. And not many other sites. So there's huge imbalance in this data set as well in terms of where your annotations are being drawn from, as well as huge imbalance in the numbers of annotations per group. And yeah, we had anything from cobbly, gravelly, very coarse substrate through to very fine sand and mud as well. There's also no consistency in the annotation technique. So here's obviously the worst example, but there's things like this where a polygon had been drawn around an entire area and it had been labeled as anemones versus individual dots being put on anemones. There was not time in this project to properly quality check the data set and remove this sort of thing. We removed the worst offenders, but yeah, so there's a lot of noise in the data set is the point to take home, I guess. So we opted to use the you only look once architecture of AI model, which requires rectangles as its input. So we had to convert all of these points or polygons or circles or whatever. All of it had to be converted into rectangles before we could use it. That's problematic for point data particularly because you have to decide what size your rectangle is going to be. Again, there was not time to try to work out different size rectangles for different data sets for different taxa. We had to adopt one size rectangle conversion, which of course, again, introduced a huge amount of noise to the data set. Okay, so the project undertook a number of different case studies to just test what we might be able to achieve, at least in the short term. So the first case study took the entire data set of 800,000 odd annotations, all gears, all gear types, all locations, shuffled it, split it into 80% training data set for the AI, 20% validation, and trained an AI model. The results of that were, unsurprisingly, quite poor performance across all the different labels that we used. There were only 58 classes that we used. You saw them in the previous plots, and we were not working to species level. We were working to quite high group levels. So the only ones that really did pretty well on were erect sponges, stony corals, foraminifera, branching 3D corals. The recall was very low, so only a smaller fraction of the animals were being detected, about 1 in every 5. Case study 2, then, we wanted to see how well a model could generalize to a new location. So we essentially took the annotations from 7 of the locations. We would use 6 of the locations to build a model, and then we would test that model on the 7th location. And we did that for each of the different iterations of that to see how well the model did. Again, model not performing terribly well. The model's basically learning a lot about the background noise in the images from the training set, and that harms its ability to detect objects in the validation set. And this is a big problem. Just to give you some nice plots which show you how the model performed here, you can see recall plotted against precision for A is the training data set, B is the validation data set. And you can see how each of the groups do in terms of their recall and their precision. Ideally, you want high recall, high precision, just so you know what you're looking for. And you can see it does all right for arborescent sponges, one-dimensional simple sponges. So anything up in this sort of area is doing okay, but for lots of groups, it's just doing really, really badly. If we look at the predictions coming from these models, so this is the human annotated image, and that's the prediction. So you can see how badly it's doing. It's not detecting a lot of those things. Again, this is the human annotations versus the model predictions. So lots of things being missed. Okay, and then case study 3, we were interested in the effects of label quality on model performance. So in this particular scenario, then we tried 2 different things. We tried dropping training data. So we dropped 20% of the annotations, 40%, 60%, 80% of the annotations, and looked at model performance. And then we also perturbed the box around the animal by a percentage of the standard deviation of the size of the image, a percentage of the image size as a standard deviation to perturb the box. The ultimate result of that was that dropping 80% of the annotations had the same effect on recall as randomly perturbing labels with a standard deviation of only 1% of the image size. So essentially, if we made the box slightly the wrong size or slightly misaligned, that had more effect on the models, the AI model, than dropping a load of the annotations. So it just demonstrated really that the quality of the annotation is more important than the quantity of the annotations. So the summary of this project then really was that object detection for seabed imagery is not optimal yet. And this is hugely down to the training data set. We need a decent AI training data set. The classifiers you use, the annotation shapes, the gear types, the contrast can all affect AI model performance. Quality control of training data sets is an essential part of training AI models. We need better training data sets. And the preliminary results show that the quality of those annotations is more important than the quantity. So the recommendations then arising from this pilot study are really that in imagery, well, there were loads of them. I won't read them all out, but basically we need decent associated metadata. That caused a huge amount of delay when trying to merge projects, Beagle projects together. Standard naming convention for projects would be helpful, just makes it easier to understand the data. Standardized classification system when annotating imagery would be very helpful. It'd be better if we didn't have 17 trees to start off with. When you have a reference classification, publish it somewhere so it's really obvious what you're standardizing to. Quality control is super important. We need to start building in time to practice this in workflows, and between project checking. I think from an AI perspective, these are the more important things. For organisms annotated with points, like sometimes it's just better to annotate with a point. There's reasons why you might want to do that. But if people can provide some example box annotations, like about maybe just 100 across their data set, that would allow us to calculate an average box size for that animal for that data set, which means we could then turn all the other points into boxes, which would help in future. Point annotations should be made on the imagined center of a circle around the animal. So that also helps when you're trying to turn a point into a box. If you know it's the theoretical center of a box, then that makes it easier to convert. Yeah, when attempting to combine projects in Beagle, allow those merging projects. Yeah, if you're going to do this again, it'd be really helpful if the person who's merging stuff together in Beagle has access to the original volumes, because that actually would help to save time. There's lots of things we can do with AI. As I said, this was a pilot and we used an off-the-shelf YOLO. We used YOLO version 8. It wasn't time to clean the training data set properly. But if you wanted to look into this properly for AI, there's lots of things you could do, like tuning the loss function, changing the confidence threshold, using different algorithms. You don't have to use YOLO. There's other options available. using further image augmentation, so flipping images, changing the balance of lighting in images, grayscaling them, all of that helps to add to the training data set. And we need to address address class imbalance. So we're always going to have in ecology this situation where some animals we have loads and loads of annotations because they're really common, and some we don't have many, and that's what we call an imbalanced data set. So there are ways of addressing that to help your model understand better what all things look like. So you can use dynamic class weights in your AI model, and you can do over or under sampling of your to counterbalance the minority classes you've got. And you can also generate data synthetically, which can help, again, just provide a bit more for your model to go on. So I guess the important things from this project then are the guidelines for annotation going forward. If you're thinking about using AI in the future, there's things you can do now that will help make that more possible and easier to do. But the outputs of this project are that in the process of everything we did, we had to merge all these data sets together. So we've now got a web accessible national image reference collection that is drawn from those different AI data sets. So there's a reference collection, which is a sort of example of the best example of each of the species that were in that data set. But we've also got the whole training data set itself, which is in Beagle, and it's not ours to give access to, but it's with JNCC and Defra and the data owners, CFAS, and so it's there for using. We have a trained AI model that is in a GitHub repository, but we also have a workflow pipeline that enables you to apply the AI model to your own data sets, and I'll show you that in a sec. And then there's the final report, which has loads and loads more detail in it than I've been able to give here. So I'm going to stop there, and I want to show you just quickly the outputs. Okay, so there's this Colab notebook called Aquatic Eye, which again, this was just a demo, but this is something you can access. It's open, and you can basically use it to run an AI model on your own data. So you basically open up the model. There isn't probably time to go through, but you run each of these boxes. Yes, whatever, run anyway. You run each of these boxes. There's a drop-down menu for you to point it at your image data. And then it will apply the AI model to your image data set. I'll try and run that in the background to show you. We've also got the library. This is all the training data in Beagle. And that is, well, it'll have to be permission from Defra for people who want to use it, but it is there. But just be aware there's a lot of noise in it, an awful lot of noise in it. And then we have the UK catalogue that was created. So this is the single reference catalogue that was created from all of those different data sets. So everything is in the Smarter ID format, and there's a single spreadsheet which tells you about each of the images and what it's an example of. And this is all in the Smarter ID format. The whole reference library will be on the Smarter ID website eventually. We're just having a few problems there, but we will get to it. And I think that was all I was going to share. Oh, and just to say, I guess this work is continuing in some sort of format. There's work going on within this project, the decentralized learning for automated image analysis and biodiversity monitoring, which is really much more focused on the AI algorithms. And so we are continuing to work on benthic imagery through this project, which is funded by the same call as the PayDiver project that Johnny mentioned earlier. Okay, so I'll stop there. That's me.
Thank you very much to Johnny and to Kerry. That was two really interesting talks. We've got quite a few questions coming in. So I will just run through those now. I did ask people to put their names on. There's a couple right at the start that don't have the names, but I'm going to assume that they're for Johnny because they came in quite early. So Johnny, the first question is, how long does it take to process a single image?
I mean, well, that depends. Unfortunately, it's hard to give a direct answer. If you're talking about processing using the IIIF API is very quick depending on what you're after, but it also will rely on whoever is hosting that image and how much capacity they've got to conduct the processing. And there are some tools on IIIF's website where you can have, it's like a sandbox, where you can play around with some of the processing and have a go at it yourself.
Awesome, thank you. Second question is, how much of the JNCC image library has been uploaded so far?
If we're talking for the demonstrator, it's not very much at all. I think we've got maybe 50 images, which we put between the JNCC and the Dash resource spaces to test the system, basically, because we had to create the IFTO metadata for them, as that isn't a format we've got a lot of our survey data in currently. Talking in general, I think we are hoping to upload much more of our survey data onto the JNCC image catalog. But again, it's not a huge amount, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely an area we're looking to put some more time into.
Thank you. Next question also for you, Johnny. Did you explore what other sectors and organisations do with their images, e.g. space, like NASA? How do they share them?
Yes, we did. So as part of our recommendations report, we did look at various other kind of image sharing systems. So the trouble that we had was that we were looking at this federated design. So it would be quite straightforward if you're just one organization like NASA to put a load of your own images up on your own website, or as we do, have a resource space page and put a lot of your assets on there. We did look at other marine focused ones. So we looked at the FathomNet database and data portal, which is an American one, which has a lot of imagery and annotations on it through there. So I'd recommend having a look at their page. We also looked at SeaTube, which is a Canadian one, mainly for video. Again, just one organization sharing their own data. But yes, we did have a look around, and we did capture some of that within our recommendations report.
Excellent. I think the final question for you, Johnny, for now is related, which is how will owners of images manage who to share data with? Once it's uploaded, will it be available to anyone, or is it just the metadata that's available?
So under the current design, it'll be public. So any images and metadata and annotations which are uploaded would all need to be public. So it can be searchable. In the distant future, if we continue to have funding to pursue the image broker, we have had internal discussions about how you could have accounts and you could kind of set permissions that way on who you could share your data with, or specific data sets. But that's a long-term aspiration for now. So in the current model, it all needs to be public.
Thank you very much. Kerry, a question for you now. Why are point annotations not useful for training AI?
Yeah, because the model needs to know exactly where in your image your animal is, and the point doesn't give it any boundaries at all. So it needs to know the boundaries of your animal. So in theory, the best type of annotation would be a polygon where you've kind of got just the outline of your animal. But that's hugely time consuming to draw, to be honest. So boxes are fine. They'll do in the interim.
Thank you. Another one for Kerry. Are you able to tell us more about Smarter ID, please?
Yes. Okay. So Smarter ID is it's really a reference library stroke classification system. So it was really invented to deal with problems in the deep sea where we end up having anemone 1, anemone 2, anemone 3, but we're not all calling the same thing anemone 1. And so it serves as a reference to say, this is what my anemone 1 looks like. Can we all call this thing anemone 1? And then at least we're vaguely dealing with the same thing. And in doing so, then it also provides example images of not just anemone 1, but actually named taxa as well. So if you like, it's like you know, like a Hamlin guide to the seashore, but for the rest of the animals, providing an image of each species, but then also these more random terms, particularly when it comes to anemones and sponges, where we don't often have names, but we might be able to tell that this thing is definitely different to this thing.
Okay, thank you. Why does the model vary so much in terms of recognition across groups?
Well, yes, that's the question, isn't it? There's lots of reasons why it will vary. So just as in with humans, some things are just easier to spot than others. They have very distinct shapes. They're very clear. Other things are much more amorphous and variable in shape. But a lot of it will be to also do with the training library itself. So we may not have as many images to train the AI on for some taxa. Some taxa will have thousands of images, examples. Other taxa will have less. We also have in that data set the problem that we had to turn all that point data into boxes. The box size we chose will have most certainly been too small for some taxa, too big for other taxa, and that would also have caused problems. But when we have done this with very clean data sets, the AI models still do very well on some taxa and not very well on others, and it is quite similar to the ones humans do well on and don't do well on, which probably comes down to how distinct they are, but also the fact that they're trained on human annotated data. And so if humans are finding certain things easy, then they'll not make mistakes. Whereas if humans are finding some things hard and difficult, there'll be lots of noise in the data as well.
Thank you, that makes sense. A question from Graham Duncan. Regarding the challenges with point data, since a bounding box is needed, could tools like segment anything be used to auto-generate polys from points?
Yes and no. So yes, you can. And it works quite well when you've got things on sediment backgrounds. So if the background's really boring and the animal is very clear against it, segment anything will work and it will draw a nice polygon around it. But for a lot of these data, when you're on stony ground, anything different, you know, rhodolith beds or merle beds or anything that's not that's more complex background, segment anything doesn't work. It's that simple. We've tried it.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there any intention to provide standardizing guidance for image annotation and processing to help future-proof later training and AI use?
Well, as luck would have it, we wrote the Beagle for Ecologists, which is on Zenodo, which does have some guidance in it for annotating for AI, but we would like to now update that given what we've learned from this exercise as well. So there are recommendations in this report, which I think Defra will be publishing at some point, that make recommendations specifically for annotation for then thinking forward to using it for AI. So hopefully they'll publish that soon. But we'd be very happy to pass that information on to anybody. I don't think Defra are worried about us passing that on.
A question for both of you now. The recommendations Kerry shared sounds like they would link to Johnny's work, where the two projects joined up, or will they be in the future?
We would love them to have been joined up. The simple fact of the matter is there wasn't the funding available, but clearly our project's generated a big sort of data set that's currently sitting on Beagle, and Johnny's project has been working out how we handle that sort of data. So yeah, it would be great if we then had some funding to try and join them up, but there wasn't. I don't know if Johnny knows any different.
No, I think we joined up right towards the end of your project, looking at some of your recommendations in the sense of how that can be used to kind of export the data from the image broker, but as I say, with the image broker tool, we didn't really get on to exporting data in any specific format. So yeah, as Kerry said, we'd definitely like to, and it's definitely as the image broker continues under the PayDiver project, it's definitely a report we'll look back on to make sure those kind of recommendations are captured in our work going forwards.
Yeah, and I would also add that the PayDiver project and the Deal project are both funded by the same NERC stream, and I know that we are staying in touch between those two projects as well to try to ensure that we're moving forward together and not diverging, because there's so much that needs doing and there's not enough money to go around, so we definitely don't want to be going off in different directions.
Thank you. Kerry, why is rectangle the only shape that the system can recognise?
That's just YOLO. So that's the YOLO family are built to take rectangles. I think you can, if you go into the code yourself and you're happy to do that, you probably can adapt it to take polygons, but I think it will just convert it into a rectangle, actually. I think we tried that. There's other algorithms that don't require polygon.
So actually, the next question I was going to come to is, are there alternatives to YOLO that are better? Why did you choose YOLO?
There are alternative model architectures for AI models, and they all have pros and cons. Now, whether one is better than another for this task, we don't know. That takes testing, basically. But there are definitely architectures like MaskRCNN, which takes polygons, not squares, and so that may well be better. But these are the kinds of research that need doing, is trying to work out, you know, what's the best architecture for what you're trying to achieve and the types of data that we're playing with.
Okay, thank you. Massive thanks to the speakers. I really enjoyed the live demos. Could you share the links, please? And is there a way for people to give you feedback?
Yes, I'm happy to share the links to the stuff we've got.
Excellent. If you wanted to email them to the Science Talks inbox, we can then forward them out to our audience. That might be a straightforward way of doing it. Will recommendations that you make be fed into current best practice guidelines?
I believe that's the intention for the recommendations made in our report that I think JNCC are currently going through, looking at their best practice guidelines for image annotation. So I think they'll be looking at those, but probably someone at JNCC, like Kate, might say something more about that.
Yeah, I can jump in there and help out that one. So yeah, we're currently updating the NMBA QC guidelines, and we're looking at how to integrate this within that. And yeah, the advice from both packages in terms of metadata requirements and things going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. A question for you, Johnny. Can you remind me or remind us what DASH is, please?
Yes, sorry, I should have spelled it out. DASH is the UK Data Archive Centre for Species and Habitat Data, which is run by the MBA. So yeah, it's a big data archive centre for biodiversity, marine biodiversity data.
Thank you. Kerry, how much difference in time is it to annotate by point, box, polygon, for example? Why do we use points all the time? Is area not also important info?
Yes, the difficulty is, and this is lovely conversations we've had through the big picture group actually with contractors. The difficulty is it takes longer to draw a box, and it takes even longer to draw a polygon. Now, on an individual basis, that's not that long, but when you multiply that up by the size of data sets, it's a significant more amount of time, and that of course costs money, and that makes contractors more expensive. And so there's a trade-off to be had in the way that we choose to annotate. Boxes, we can turn points into boxes. That isn't a problem, as long as we know that the point is the center of the imaginary box, and that we have an average size for that box for that taxa, which is why we recommend maybe just trying to do 100 example boxes. If you imagine you've got a whole wall of jewel anemones, you're not going to draw tiny boxes around each one of them. It's really time consuming. Putting dots on them is really quick. So, you know, there's good reasons why you might want to use dots. So we've just got to find a way that's cost effective for those annotating, but also gives us the best information we can to then turn that into AI usable data.
Sure. Okay. Another question: are the PayDiver and Deal projects going to be joined up?
Yes.
Yes, as much as possible.
Excellent.
Yeah, we've got some more plans for some cross project meetings and stuff going forwards on the various work streams where they interact. So yeah, very keen for those projects to be working together.
I feel like the final question that we have might actually link to that. Actually, no, it's not the final one. Another one's just popped up. The next question is Defra providing any further funding for this work, especially given the government push for AI?
We haven't currently got any further Defra funding. So unfortunately, the MNCA project has finished end of March, and yeah, we're currently working on writing up all the reports, getting those over to Defra to be publicly published, and hopefully once those are all published, we can continue discussions with Defra. But in the meantime, we're lucky enough to have the NERC funded paydiver and deal projects, which are continuing a lot with this work kind of immediately on, really. So I know a lot of the image broker stuff, we're taking the lessons learned, because it is yeah, myself and Dan Lear at the MBA who are kind of leading on both of those areas of work, so we can just continue all the lessons learned straight on into paydiver.
Excellent. And the last question is, how long do you think before the broker will be live?
I mean, the demonstrator is live. Until a fully working broker, that, yeah, I don't know. That is how long's a piece of string, really. There's so many angles we could develop it, and we could keep tinkering with it for a long time. By the end of the paydiver project, which I think is just under 2 years, we hope to have a really fleshed out working service which connects 2, maybe 3 data repositories. Always keen for more people who are interested in, please email me. Yeah, I'd love to hear who else is interested and see, yeah, integrating more data. But before a fully working broker, it might still be some way off.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That was all of the questions that we have. So I'd like to just thank both of our speakers. That was 2 incredibly interesting talks about various things happening across the organisation. So yes, thank you both very much. Did somebody raise their hands and then put it back down again? I think they put it back down. So yes, thank you very much for the speakers, and thank you all for attending, and we'll give you 3 minutes back in your day. Thank you, everybody.